How's it going, guys? Back with another video today. It's been a little while since I put any content up on the channel, a few months actually. So appreciate the patience. I recently hit 500 subscribers, so I figured it's about time for a new video. Big up to everyone who's supported the channel so far. I recently moved, as you can see from the different surroundings here, and started a new job. So that's why I've been a little bit tied up and haven't been able to really dedicate much time to the channel. Today we're going to have a look at one of my new favorite tools. It's Phaseplant by Kilohearts. Really great modular synthesizer, which includes wavetable, analog oscillators, really capable FM routing, and also sampling capability. It's quite similar to Zebra 2 in its architecture, as you're going to see. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. I've been loving Phaseplant. I'll be going over a few of the things that I think could be improved to make it a really, really great instrument, although it is very capable as is. Um, Kilohertz recently updated it a couple of weeks ago with some really good improvements, and they do tend to listen to the community's requests and implement those as they update the software. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please smash that subscribe button and bell notification, and let's jump in. Okay, I'm here in Cubase 10.5. I recently updated. I'm still running it in Windows 7 without any issues, which is kind of cool. It's supposed to be Windows 10 only. I will be updating to Windows 10 at some point fairly soon. I just can't really be bothered to clean sweep my machine right now. So this is Kilohearts Phaseplant. As you can see, it's quite similar to Zebra. I've got a Zebra HZ open right here, and you can see it's similar that you've got your sound generators on the left and controls down at the bottom on this one and modulators on the right. Whereas in Phaseplant, this is where your sound generator sources will be loaded. So you've got analog oscillators, noise generators, samplers, and wavetable oscillators. You can also load distortion and filter modules into the signal flow of your generator path here, which can lead to some pretty interesting effects, especially with the FM routing in this thing. You can also add groups, auxiliary sends, mixer modules and things in here. This is where all of the effects will be loaded, and the amount of effects you can load will depend on which package of the Kilohearts Toolbox you have. I'm running the ultimate one, which means I have everything available here. And to get the most out of this synth, you really do kind of need a lot of the tools in the ultimate package, which I will talk about as we go through this. Down below is the modulation section. Pretty standard fare here as far as the modulator goes. You've got envelopes, LFOs, random modulators. This is like a key tracking, the note modulation. Pressure is aftertouch modulation, and then velocity modulation. These ones here I haven't really used too much. The multiplier kind of multiplies two different modulation sources, and the output of that is what will be used as a modulation. I probably won't really be using these in this demonstration because I haven't fully got my head around them yet. Up here you have 8 macro knobs. These are the only parameters in the synth that can be MIDI learned. So if you want to MIDI learn anything in any of the oscillators or effects, you first have to assign them to a macro. This is where the preset browser is. There's quite a lot of factory presets, some of them made by people like Artifacts and Venus Theory, other drum and bass YouTubers out there. There's a really good variety of factory presets available. We're not really going to be looking at the presets today. We're going to be building a few different patches from scratch to kind of demonstrate the capability of this thing. I've only had it since the holiday sale, and I'm so far really impressed with it. With a couple of minor improvements, I could see myself never using FM8, Zebra, or Serum ever again. But there are still a few features in those synths which this is missing, which would be quite easy to implement. So if anyone from Kilohertz happens to watch this video, please take heed. It'd be great if we could get some improvements specifically to the modulation sources, which I'll be talking about later. So firstly, let's have a look at the FM capability of this thing. If I load an analog oscillator here, you're going to see that it automatically adds a group. And this is like the hold all. Anything that we add into this group will be coming through this output that it's created here. We have a master amplitude envelope which will be applied to everything within this group. And this is being sent out to effects lane 1. That is then being routed into effects lane 2. Lane 2 is going into lane 3, and lane 3 is coming to our master output down here. You can open and close a keyboard at the bottom using this control. So let's get started. I'm going to move over to a sine oscillator here, and I'm going to add another couple of oscillators outside of this group to modulate this with. So if we add 1, 2 analog oscillators, I'm also going to move these to sine wave. And this one I'm going to pitch up 1 full octave, 12 semitones. And the one below will do 2 octaves, 24 semitones. Now, this little plus icon here is how you can route the FM from one oscillator into another. So if I click on this, you're going to see these plus icons open up here, and these are what we can modulate. This is the audio rate modulation capability of Phaseplant. Standard FM would be kind of modulating the phase here, and you can also modulate the shift, the pitch, and the level. And I think modulating the level is more like a ring modulation. It multiplies the signals together. So I'm just going to apply a little bit of FM to this modulator, and then apply some FM from this modulator to our group here. And if I play a key, you're going to hear the FM open as I push this up. So yeah, pretty standard FM sine wave there. What you can also do is set another modulator to apply the modulation depth here. So if I set maybe an LFO, and I'm going to switch this to a ramp up shape, we'll close that. I'm going to put it into unipolar mode right here, and let's maybe sync it. And another thing to note here is it doesn't have dotted or triplet values. If you wanted to do maybe an eighth dotted, you would have to do 3/16. If you wanted a quarter dotted, it would be 3/8. In this case, I think I'm going to do 4/8, so a half bar modulation here. I'm going to put it into one-shot mode, and we will assign that to these little yellow icons here. And that will mean that this LFO, which is kind of like an envelope right now, will be applied to the FM modulation. So if I hit a note now, this is going to start at a standard sine wave and slowly hit the peak of that FM modulation that I applied. We can then increase this modulation amount maybe, and that will rise up to this level. We could maybe give a little bit more modulation on this one too. Okay, so as you can see, the FM capability of this thing is really quite cool. I'm just going to bring this gain up to, say, -3 dB. And just to be on the safe side, while we're doing some sound design here, I'm going to add a limiter to my master output, just so we don't clip the speakers for anyone listening there. Let's put a Pro L on there, just on the default setting. Switch back to here. Okay, so we could maybe add, another thing that's kind of cool here, as I mentioned, you can add filters and distortions into this signal flow. So say we wanted, if I move these around, we could add a distortion after this modulator. We could, you can move these anywhere into the signal path here. So if we put it after our main oscillator here, this is actually what will be output. So yeah, quite a bit of distortion there. Let's maybe bring the drive down a bit more. Okay, maybe back the gain off a little bit more here. You can see we're kind of hitting that peak. So you can add distortion in here. We can also, if you hold Alt, you can insert sound generators anywhere you want in the signal path. You can also add filters in here. So we could add maybe a low pass, give it a little bit of Q here, and we could assign that to control the filter cutoff a little bit there. And if we bring the cutoff down to, I know, 100 Hertz. So it's kind of cool. It shows you on this oscilloscope exactly what's happening to the sound. So this is the oscilloscope for our main oscillator. This is what the waveform looks like after distortion, and then this is after the low pass filtering, which is actually what's being output to lane 1 here. We can increase the slope here, and this is a new feature that was implemented in the recent update. You used to have no slope controls on the filters here. Maybe open that up a bit. For now, I'm going to remove this, and we'll maybe remove this as well, and we'll just focus on the effects lane. And I don't want it to start at a clean sine wave, so if I go into this pen tool, this is how you can edit your LFOs. So if I bring this up maybe so it starts around here, we'll kind of curve it this way. If you right click on these, it kind of straightens them out. Okay, let's see how that sounds. It should start with a little bit of FM now. Okay, so then we can add a distortion module here, and the distortion plugin is actually quite good. It's got a few different algorithms of distortion here. So you've got overdrive, saturation, foldback distortion, sine shaping. Let's maybe back that off a little bit. And I'm going to bring this down to 0, and we'll apply this LFO to the drive as well, so that opens up along with the filter, or with the FM modulation. Let's maybe now add a filter, or maybe some chorus. Bring the mix down, maybe bring the rate down a bit, and the delay. Okay, and let's maybe now add a filter to this. And one thing to note is the standard filter in Phaseplant is really quite basic. If we look at, say, Zebra 2, we go into the, if we open a voltage control filter here, and this is pretty standard in most synthesizers. You've got a lot of different filter shapes, lots of different low passes with different kind of resonant peaks here. And, so there's quite a lot of variety to choose from. Whereas in here, all we have is a standard low pass, band pass, high pass, notch, low shelf, peak, and high shelf. And all you can really control is the slope and, the standard cutoff and Q, and, gains on the shelves and peak. So the standard filter is pretty basic. It does also, they do also have a ladder filter, which is kind of more of a Moog type filter. We can, maybe apply this to that, and we'll have a listen to how that one sounds. Let's maybe up the resonance a bit as well. And the drive. So this filter is kind of a nicer low pass than the one in the main filter. But one thing to note, if you have the ultimate toolbox, you will have the slice EQ. And this is where things get kind of interesting. So if we open up this EQ, this is very much like FabFilter Pro Q3. You've got per band, mid-side capability. But the one thing that's really cool about this is, say we add a low pass to this, we'll give it a bit of a hump here. We'll add a couple of peaks and give them kind of narrow points to kind of add some resonant peaks around the cutoff point, like that. And this one will maybe change the slope to maybe 24 decibels per octave. And then where it gets kind of interesting is you can modulate this offset, and it will modulate the entire EQ curve like a filter. So if you have the slice EQ, you've basically got limitless filter shapes. So it kind of cancels out the issue with the filters in here being kind of basic. So, we could add an LFO, on sine. Let's maybe put it on a, oh, it does actually have triplets, but not dotted. We can put it on a quarter dotted here. Maybe decrease the depth a little bit and apply that to this filter offset here. And you can see that that's now modulating like a filter. So that's really cool. And just having a full parametric EQ within a synth this capable it's kind of it's kind of new. Most synths will have maybe a 4-band EQ with a couple of shells and a couple of peaks to play with, but having an EQ this capable within a synth is kind of a game changer. And speaking of game changers, one thing that is really cool since the recent update is again, you'll need the ultimate package or to buy multipass as a separate plugin. But multipass is like a multiband processing tool. You can have up to 5 bands of processing. We'll leave it at 3 for now. And say we wanted to bring this down to, I don't know, 150 hertz. We'll leave our sub clean. And we could maybe bring this down to 600. So we've got sub, low mids, and high mids and tops right here. So if we only wanted to process the high mids, we could add, another distortion in here, maybe a saturation. And, maybe on the top here, we wanted to have a reverb that's only affecting the top of the signal. Maybe push that up a little bit, bring the decay down. So that's really quite cool. Full multiband processing of this capability within a synth. Once again, it's a total game changer. You can load pre-effects here, post-effects here to affect the entire signal. But that alone is a great patch that they added in the update a couple of weeks ago. Honestly, the only thing that I think could really be improved in this synth is adding tempo syncing to the envelopes and loop points to the LFOs. So you can kind of use them like multi-stage envelope generators that loop from one point to the end until you release the key. That would be something that's kind of essential and is a feature in most modern synths these days. I think really the weakest point of Phaseplant is the actual modulation sources. They're kind of lacking in options. And the note-based modulation as well could do with a frequency response curve. So say lower notes, the modulation depth is more responsive on lower notes than it is on higher notes, kind of like it is like you have in Serum. So yeah, that's kind of the FM covered. Let's now have a quick look at the Wavetable editor. So I'm going to open a Wavetable here, and the Wavetable editor is very capable in Phaseplant. And I'm going to, just for the purposes of this, I'll assign this macro to here, and let's bring that down. Let's delete that. So if I want to MIDI learn, you just click to bind here, and then I'll move a control, and we can cycle through as I hit a note. And this one's a very standard wavetable. It goes from a sine through a triangle wave into a saw wave, a square wave, and then a pulse. You have unison control on the wavetable oscillators and detuning. So you can, easily get that kind of Reese movement. So I'm going to bring this down to 1 for now, and let's have a look at the Wavetable editor. So if we open this is how you access the editor. There's a few different ways that you can make your own wavetables. You can create points like this, and make wavetables that way. If you right click on these, they kind of sharpen or smooth out. So we could start maybe with that one there. Over here, we could, move some of this stuff around. maybe sharpen a couple of these points. And then over here, we could maybe reverse the modulations. Like this. And then at the end, we can, I don't know, maybe smooth them out. Make them kind of opposites of the other one. And it automatically morphs between them, which is kind of cool. So what I would do now is normalize that. You can go to fix, normalize, and that'll give us kind of a, you can see it's kind of shifting in the middle there. And let's see how that sounds. So that's one way of creating your own wavetables. If I start a new one, you can also freehand draw like this. Go to another point here. Another point here. And you can see that it's automatically morphing between these points as I draw them in. And maybe at the end here we'll do something a bit more saw wavy. And we will select that entire range, normalize, and let's see how that one sounds. Maybe give it a bit of unison. So that's another way to create wavetables. You can also create them from samples. So let's start a new one here. I'm going to go create from sample. And we can try a couple of these bass notes. I think this is a NA sample pack. Let's try this one first. Okay, so you can see we've got this kind of dead space at the end of the sample here. If you want to fill the entire wavetable with this, what you would do is go to your very last frame and we'll drag the source down until it kind of hits the end of the sample before it fades out there, and we will hit done. Now that should be, we can, again, we'll go in here, we'll normalize it, close it, and that should now be a wavetable created from a bass sample. Which is pretty cool. You can also, one thing that is kind of nice here, if we'll close this one out again and create from sample. I think I'll bring in that same one again here. And you can see that it's supposed to be an F note, but it has detected it as a F sharp. So I'm just going to correct that to F1. And if we open another wavetable oscillator in here, I'm just going to insert another wavetable. We'll drag it up into this group. Now in this one, I'm going to create new. We'll close it. And say we wanted the very first bar or the very first slice of this wavetable. We can select all of that, copy. We'll close this, open this one, and we'll just paste that at the beginning. So that's one there. We can hit done. We'll go back to this one and new. Create from sample. We'll bring in a different F note sample, maybe this one. And again, I'm going to select the very end here and drag the source back to, I don't know, maybe here. Hit done. And let's have a little listen to this one. Find a frame that we like. Okay, we could maybe take that frame. That is, if I just delete this modulation here, it'll tell us exactly what frame we're on. So frame 83. If I go into the editor here now, we'll select frame 83. We'll copy it. And we'll go to this one. And say here we can paste. Okay, now what I'm going to do is select from this one to this one and morph. Done. Close that. We'll open this one again and we'll create another new one and create from sample. Let's maybe try number 17. We're going to call it F1. And I forgot to do that on the last one we imported, so it might have created an issue. Again, we'll select the entire range of the sample before it sort of starts to fade out somewhere. I don't know, maybe somewhere here. And we'll find a point in this one that we like. Okay, so frame 58. We'll go in here, we'll find frame 58. Copy that. And we'll go back to this wavetable. And maybe over here we'll paste. And then we can drag from there to there and morph. Done. And then we will do one more sample. We'll go into this one, create from sample again, and let's maybe try bass hit 8 this time. Okay, it's on F1 this time, which is correct. Just going to hit done because we're only taking one frame of this, and let's find a frame of that one that we like. Maybe 122. So we'll find frame 122 here. Copy it. Go back to this one, and at the very end here, we'll paste. And then we'll select from here to the last available frame and morph. Hit done. And now I'm going to select the entire range, normalize it, and let's see how this wavetable sounds. Should be morphing between 4 different F-note bass samples. Maybe give it a little bit of unison, bring the detune amount down a bit, maybe spread them a bit. Up the gain. So yeah, very capable wavetable editor. And where this gets really cool is you can actually apply effects to different portions of the wavetable. So say we wanted the end from halfway point to the end to have some FM. We could go to effects here and we'll do maybe sine FM. And bring the amount down to, we'll select from here. We go to the very beginning. I'm going to bring the amount to 0. In the middle here, we can start maybe do 5%. And at the end, or maybe here, we can bring that up to 10%. And then at the end, back down to 0. We'll hit done and see how that sounds. So let's have a look at what other effects we could apply to this. We can go to effects. We could maybe try a comb filter. So let's maybe start in the middle again, and we'll bring, I don't know, bring the cutoff down. Maybe bring the mix down. And then at the end here, we'll bring the mix up, bring the cutoff down. Maybe to about 43%, something like that, and we'll hit done. Let's once again normalize and see how that sounds. So, you know, very capable, and you can really create some pretty cool wavetables from layering different samples and morphing between them. Let's now have a look at the sample oscillator. So you can load any sample into here. I exported a duduk sound from East-West Ra, which we're going to use here. So if we import that, this is what it sounds like. I'm just going to bring this down to, I don't know, C3. Bring the gain up. So that's what the original sample sounds like. Say we wanted to make a kind of a granular pad out of this. The sample oscillators don't have granular controls on an oscillator level, but what you can do to get around that is duplicate these and kind of modulate them differently. So if I set the loop point to infinite, we're going to maybe start it from 3% into the sample. We'll start the loop at the same position, and we'll bring the loop length down to, I don't know, maybe 3%. See how that sounds? So it's quite jittery at the moment. Let's bring the crossfade up to kind of smooth out that looping a bit. Going to bring the attack up to smooth out the beginning of the sound. And we'll give it a little bit of release as well. Okay, so what we could do here is if we add a random modulator, I'm going to smooth out the modulation here, maybe bring the depth down a little bit, and I'm going to put this in unipolar mode so it only modulates forward, and we'll slow this way down, I don't know, maybe to about 40 Hertz. And what I'm going to do here is assign that to modulate the sample start, maybe by 10%, and also the loop start by 10%. And see how that sounds. Okay, what we can now do is duplicate this, and to do that we can hold Control and drag. So if we duplicate it twice, this one I'm going to start from maybe 9%, do the same with the loop start point, and then maybe we'll do 14% on this one. See how that sounds. Okay, so what we could also do here is duplicate this entire group. So again, I'll hold Control and drag, and we could maybe pan one group hard right and the other one hard left. Okay. Where we could make this a little more interesting is we could make these play chords. So we could maybe push this one up 3 semitones, this one up 7 semitones for a minor chord. Do the same with this one. And maybe this guy, I'm going to drag down. Let's actually add another group here. I'm going to drag this, a copy of this, into this group. We'll also copy the output settings here, so drag that down to there so that our envelope is the same. And on this one, let's maybe bring it down a full octave. Let's see what we've got here now. So it's starting to get a bit more pad-like. We could then start adding some effects here. So let's maybe give it a bit of distortion, maybe a little overdrive. Might bring it down to one voice. We could add a little delay. Let's maybe bring this down. Actually, let's sync it. Let's do maybe 1/16th note. We'll turn on ping pong, bring the feedback down a bit, and the mix down a bit. We could also turn up the ducking here so that the delay kind of fades in as we release the key. Let's also add some reverb to this. turn the mix up a little bit here. Want it fairly wet, maybe bring the size up as well. Bring the decay time down a fair bit. And maybe increase the width too. Okay, we could then maybe add a filter into this chain. Just use the standard filter, maybe a band pass, give it a little extra Q here. And what we could do is add a note modulator. We'll put that in unipolar mode, and we'll assign that to the cutoff. Maybe back this off a little bit. So then as I play higher notes, the filter kind of moves up in frequency. And because we changed the pitch of some of these oscillators, we only have to press one key to create a minor chord. What we could now try is maybe let's add a LFO, or yeah, let's maybe add an LFO. We'll switch this one to ramp up mode again. Slow it down. Put it in unipolar mode and one-shot mode, and I'm going to assign that to the mod depth here. Let's maybe bring that start point up a bit. I'm going to reduce the depth, move this up a bit more. And let's maybe speed it up. We could also apply it to the Q of the filter and see how that sounds. So, you know, it's quite easy to set this up for granular synthesis as well and create some quite interesting pad sounds from a static sample. So that's kind of how that works. With the multipass processing, so say we wanted to process this in multiband instead. Let's remove some of this stuff. We'll add an instance of multipass in here. And there's a couple things I need to touch on. So in order to modulate anything in here, let's maybe on this mid band, we'll add our delay, just so the lows aren't affected by it. We'll maybe bring the feedback down and the mix down and the ducking up like we had before. Maybe slow it down a little bit. Okay, so now the delay is only affecting this part. Let's also add the reverb back in. Increase the size a bit, increase the width, turn the mix up, bring the decay time down. Okay, so if we wanted to modulate anything in here, first we have to assign a macro. So say we wanted to assign a macro to the panning and assign a macro to the reverb mix. If we wanted to modulate those now, we can close this and you'll see that we have these two available. So say we turn this on, we could modulate that one a little bit there and maybe add another LFO, assign shape, and let's maybe sync it to eighth notes. And I'm going to assign that to this one. Now if we open multipass, you'll see that the panning is being modulated as well as the reverb mix by those macros. So yeah, having multiband processing of this capability that you can actually modulate with the synth modulation sources is absolutely amazing. It's something that I've never really seen in a synth before. So big up to Kilohearts for adding that capability. It really does. It's quite a game changer as far as sound design purposes go. So yeah, that is kind of Phaseplant in a nutshell. It does also have, noise oscillators. We could maybe try adding one of those in here. Bring the level down and maybe modulate the level value all the way down. The thing with the noise oscillators is I don't think you can modulate the pitch or anything like that. So I haven't really used the noise layers in this very much, but I thought just for the sake of going over everything in here, I would talk about it a bit. Now, you do have a lot of different effects here, and one thing to note is all of the kilohertz effects that you own here can also be used as VST plugins. So say I go to my VST effects here, as you can see, we could drag the distortion straight onto the Phaseplant channel, and then you can use it as a plugin as well as a snap-in within a host like this. So the Kilohertz bundle really is quite a capable bundle, and I've been really enjoying a lot of these effects as well. They look quite basic as far as the controls available, but they are actually really quite good plugins. They sound great, and this distortion one is becoming one of my favorite distortion plugins. I've been using it a lot lately. And yeah, so that is Phaseplant in a nutshell. I hope you enjoyed this video and this demonstration, and I'll be back soon with some more content for the channel. Once again, please do hit that subscribe button and bell notification to be notified of any future content, and I'll see you next time. Peace out, guys.